Well, thank you so much for quickly joining in after a brief lunch. We are running a little late today. This topic that we're discussing is standardization in pharma industry, and are we on track? Because globally also we have had some lapses when it comes to exporting cough syrups. Countries like Gambia and Uzbekistan have been at the bitter end of it. And we have got some sort of, what do you say, shadow over our image as the pharmacy of the world over the last couple of, years. So let me start by asking Ms. Priyanka. Ms. Priyanka, how do you see standardization at this point in time in pharmaceutical industry in India? Where do you think the need lies?
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'll just start off with what you started off with respect to the discussion on quality, period. I think there has been a preconceived notion that India in general lacks quality standards. And there was a whole book, I'm sure half of you know what this is, I don't want to refer to any book now, but that was written based on that. But I think a lot has changed since then. And let's be real, nobody wants to sell a spurious drug intentionally. Personally, I know this can be a little bit controversial, but I think standardization in general is very subjective. In India, for example, there is compendium, right? There is compendium that has been published by the CDSCO, but I think where the confusion lies is in the fact that there is a central authority and then there's states that monitor the regulation, and there's situations where due to the confusion that lies in analyzing the compendium, one state considers a product to have passed quality standards and the other state would not have. So that's where I think there is a significant gap in terms of understanding quality in totality, and that's where I think India really needs to improve on standardizing its quality standards with ICH guidelines, which is, of course, what I'm sure everybody here knows that, what the FDA and all the European authorities and all the major authorities follow.
So, Mr. Singh, there's this forever debate about central and state authorities when it comes to regulation in the pharmaceutical industry. Going forward, and a lot of people in the industries have said that, the center authority has to take the center stage, and maybe going forward we need that. What are your views on it?
So I think there are a couple of things, right? From a pharmaceutical perspective, it should be central, right? How do we have the CDCSO? It's a central authority, but healthcare is a state subject, and that's there in the Constitution, and that's not going to change, right? So you have to change the Constitution for that. So healthcare delivery, the onus of healthcare, police, all these things are part of state subjects, and that's always going to be residing with the states. But like how Priyanka said, that there are standards that are global in nature, and those standards need to be populated and accepted by each state. And I think that's what we want to do. The onus of healthcare delivery will always be with the state governments, but accepting of one standard throughout, accepting that these high standards of the FDA percolate down to the states, even in their administration of pharmaceutical companies or pharmacies.
Right. Ms. Priyanka, you talked about the US FDA, and recently the India head of the US FDA in the media said that many pharmaceutical companies in India are non-compliant to the quality measures, and that is also creating an issue in the supply chain in the US. So, what is the, how should the initiative from the industry itself can come in?
Sorry, I just got a little distracted. My name is misspelled there. But this topic in general, if posed to somebody who comes from a manufacturing background like I do, in terms of the work that we do, is really upsetting because it's a very generalized statement. Only people who are really into the day-to-day manufacturing understand what it takes to manufacture that product a single product that is exported all the way to the US or the rest of the world. So it is a very generalized statement. Lack of quality standards is again very, very subjective. Quality standards are defined differently by different countries. And at the end of the day, if the US FDA didn't think that India met standards, why would, a simple stat, right? Something that comes to my mind, 2021, I think there were, 2018, I think, 104 sites in India that were audited by the US FDA. In 2020, there were 250 plus, and then there was COVID, so there was a gap. Why? And they were all approved. Why? Because there are quality products going from India to the US. So when people make a general statement that India lacks quality, that really, really upsets me because it truly is not the fact. And even in terms of exports, 20% of the world's generic pharmaceuticals go from India. And sorry, not to bore you with stats, but today the Indian industry is, as of I think 2 years ago, it was $45 billion in overall numbers, but it's touted to get to 150 billion by 130 billion by 2030. So that means something, right? India does not lack quality. Yes, some companies lack, again, I'm making a controversial statement. Some companies take quality for granted. Some companies might be a little bit confused by the guidance provided by each country. And most companies, I will write that down, most companies are 100% committed to quality, but there's a plethora of reasons why they get cited. And just because they get cited with 483s doesn't mean they're not compliant. Those are just observations that are very subjective to even an individual. Like, you can give some observations that he might not. It's based on what you know about the FDA, what you know about the guidances versus what he is. So it's very subjective. So this whole general philosophy of India lacking quality is completely untrue.
Absolutely. Mr. Singh, also, online pharmacies are gaining ground in India, and we see an opposing factor, which is the brick and mortar pharmacists and, people sitting in medical, shops. So they are opposing the ground that online pharmacies are gaining at this point in time. So what interventions do you think are required there? Because it's an ongoing issue.
Yeah, so we have to understand why people are opposing this, right? Why are the local chemists opposing this? Mr. Med is an online pharmacy, but we don't actually compete with the local chemists because we're a super specialty pharmacy. Right? These are medicines that we give which are not available at Ashok Medicals or Murthy Medicals down the road from your house. So in some ways, we're actually helping online, like the patient, get access to medicines which he can't from the neighborhood pharmacy, right? That's number one. Number two is, what is the reason why they're objecting to this, right? It's always been because of this discount game that others have created, right? There was a lot of the big players who were so big that they gave Dr. Velu money exits, right? These are the guys who gave a lot of discounts. They raised a lot of money just to provide discounts. And that was the main reason why why the industry is opposing online pharmacies, is because people are going with the app, saying, see, Pharmacies, or whoever's giving me 20% discount, these guys are giving me 22, and there's no way that the local chemist can actually meet that. So if people are just creating demand for themselves by discounting without economic sense, right, just to get customers and to lure investors with a future value of their lifetime value when you're bleeding money right now, that's when you're not going to, have a sustainable business. So that I completely agree with that. We should compete on fair grounds. The other two reasons I think are very important, which have been on data privacy as well as, spurious drugs. These can be easily regulated. For example, Mr. Med is a pharmacy. We are a regulated pharmacy. We have a pharmacy license in two states. and we'll get pharmacy licenses in multiple states. That's the easiest way. The ownership of the pharmaceutical product should be with the pharmacy. I don't believe in these marketplace kind of models where I'm creating the demand and someone else services it. In a healthcare business, especially in a pharmacy business, you need to own the inventory, be inventory-led, deliver to the patient, and give the benefits of accessibility, affordability, ease of reach. These are the things that online pharmacies are giving, but ensure that you own the inventory. And I think if we are doing that, which a lot of the pharmacies now started to do, where they own the inventory, then there's complete transparency, and these other issues with data as well as spurious drugs kind of go away.
Right. Ms. Priyanka, counterfeiting drugs in India is also, comes up in the conversation, and the government has suggested that barcoding will be done to, deal with it. How effective would you think that will pan out?
I think I'm going to let Devashish answer this, primarily because my area of focus is the US. But from the US perspective, the FDA did impose something called a unique identifier. GTIN's about 2.5 to 3 years ago, and August of this year is when the whole system is going to go live. And post this year, if any generic supplier in the US does not have their product barcoded, aggregated to a customer level, so essentially if you're manufacturing a product, if I'm the customer, wherever I buy it from, if I just track the product using that number, the unique identifier that the product has, I should know details of where it's been, how it's traveled, when it was made, the expiry date, the manufacturer, etc. So I think that's what India is trying to do, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Indian government has made it mandatory for about 300 products to be barcoded, but you should answer this question.
So I think barcoding is a start, but there are much better technologies like blockchain, which will help create the transparency of the barcode. Because I'll give you an example. I was in Turkey a couple of years ago, and when we were going on the streets of Istanbul, there's these guys coming with these perfumes, right? And they scan it right now. And I scan, it takes me to whatever, Chanel website, and it looks original, right? Everything. So, barcode, there are already guys in Turkey that have cracked it. It's a good start, but I think more strict measures like blockchain, with the addition of, the Arogya system with the new ADHA, all those kind of systems which are more deeply linked to an individual, that's going to have a much bigger role to play than a barcode, which has been there for a long time and can still be easily cracked.
Absolutely. Let me ask you my last question. I want to address it. I want both of y'all's view on it. Going forward, what should be on the plate when we talk about standardization in pharma in India?
I'll let her answer and I'll add on.
Like I mentioned earlier, I think standardizing in general has its pros and cons. Let me just talk about the pros. Standardization across the world, not just India, right, gives anybody the flexibility to produce large volumes with the same specifications. Imagine producing one product for the whole country. For the whole world, sorry. It's so much easier. If I, as an Indian authority, have a question about something, I can reach out to the FDA, or we are all bound by some ICH guidelines. So that is, I think, what we should, as a country, go towards. And I think India has made the intent very, has the intent of moving towards maintaining ICH guidelines. But we can't impose it overnight because it is a very difficult thing to execute. Quality at the end of the day comes at a certain price, at a certain cost. Do we in India want to pay for it just yet? I don't know. I am not 100% sure. The US is certainly not ready to pay for it, but they squeeze manufacturers. That's a whole different controversial statement. But that is how I would go towards standardization. But I do want to end with one thing. I think standardization in India should be based on what the rest of the regulators around the world claim to be great quality. Because think about it, right? Today, if I say, hey, we're having an FDA audit, there's something in my heart that's still pounding. I know I'm doing everything right, but we have an FDA audit. Oh my God, something's happening. But when we say Indian companies coming to audit us, sorry, chalta hai, it'll happen. We'll have some observations. So if we have it based on a certain set of guidelines and implement it in a smooth way, not all at once because there will be severe disruptions, that is, I think, the way forward. And how do you make sure that you are able to maintain this quality? Another controversial statement is cut manpower, increase machine expenses, and that put in your money into machines and cut down human intervention to the level you can, primarily because most of the issues with pharma come because of human errors. So in my opinion, again, my opinion only, that's how we move forward with standardization.
So just 2 seconds.
Yeah, at the end of the distributor.
I think, yeah, so at the end, there are 250 companies that are getting audited by the FDA, but there are 40,000 plus pharmaceutical companies, right? The big ones are here, some of them are here, but there are guys who are in a small 100 square foot lab running a pharmaceutical company being audited by the same CDCSO. So that's where, the burden of ensuring quality to that person as well, then we need to probably have, the CDCO's budget equivalent to like an army, right? So I think these are, like she said, go slow. And then, hopefully there's no concept of big pharma, right? Because the top 10, top 20 companies in India are doing 90% of the business anyway. But it's those other 20,000 odd small companies that are continuously making a living. How do you ensure that they don't get unfairly scrutinized by these regulations? And I don't have an answer for that.
Right. Slow and steady incremental addition into the quality, at the same time looking at the needs of the industry which are there in the Indian scenario. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us on this session. Again, we are running a little late, so we won't be taking any questions, but you can take it one-on-one after we move downstage. Thank you so much.